Few minutes with blogger Luke Ford. Luke Ford, welcome back to Talk Radio 1.
Hey, Mark. Good to be here.
LukeFord.net is his website, and he wrote about something that I'm been just fascinated by this weekend, the exposure of what they're calling the world's largest Ponzi scheme, estimated to be worth $50 billion, headed by a 70-year-old, a Wall Street money manager, a guy who used to run the NASDAQ, was the chairman of the NASDAQ stock market. His name is Bernard Madoff. And what do you know about him, Luke?
Well, I know that he was the chairman of the board of the Yeshiva University Business School, so he certainly got pretty deep roots in Jewish life, calling around in Jewish Los Angeles. It seems quite a few people have been taken in and been hurt by his scam. The Jewish Community Foundation, which is the foundation of the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles, is lost somewhere, they say, between $8 and $18 million, or about 6 to 10% of their total assets. So, I mean, we're talking numbers overall around 50 billion, which is really hard to put your head around.
Yeah, well, that's how much Bill Gates is worth. The world's wealthiest man is worth about $50 billion. But yeah, you mentioned Jews. Well, a lot of these names do sound Jewish. Mortimer Zuckerman, who is the real estate magnate, also foundation of Nobel laureate Elie Wiesel, Steven Spielberg. I mean, some big names are associated with this scandal. But what's interesting is there's also big companies that should know better. Like I was reading here, HSBC, Britain's largest bank, the Royal Bank of Scotland, Britain's second largest bank, now 58% owned by the British government, said it could lose up to $600 million through its exposure in trading and collateralized lending to funds of hedge funds invested with Bernard Madoff Investment Securities LLC. What's interesting is this seems like a very East Coast story, although people like Steven Spielberg would be, I guess, technically West Coast, although he does have a home, I think, in the Hamptons. But this does seem to be a very East Coast old money story. Very wealthy people trusted this guy, and by all accounts, he was worthy of their trust.
And it's hilarious. He would refuse to invest for many people.
Yeah, a lot of people would come to him and say,
beg him to invest with them, and he'd refuse them.
Well, and here's the thing: is that this really is such a sophisticated yet such a simple con. The sophisticated nature of it is that this is a guy who had great credentials. He also, this didn't happen overnight. This pyramid scheme didn't happen overnight. And he was, on paper, producing really good results, but not crazy 8-10% results. Returns of 8%, 10%. That's very plausible. That doesn't sound like someone saying, I'll double your money in 6 months or I'll double your money in 2 years. This has been going on for years. Do you know how long this scheme has been going on?
Years. I don't know an exact number, but for many years. And as you said, 10% does seem plausible.
Yeah, but here's the part that should have raised eyebrows is that it was consistent. So there weren't bad years and good years. There wasn't 15% years and 5% years. It was 8% years almost every year. And that's why people thought, well, the one thing you can say about investing with Bernie Madoff is you won't lose money. He's like a Swiss watch. It's just very reliable. And that I can see why it was so attractive based on the people who were investing. And he wasn't going on television shows and bragging about his client list. You couldn't interview him. You couldn't speak with him, which I think should have been a warning sign to many. But people thought, well, that just shows he's not out for glory or for ego. He's doing it because he has the magic touch.
We're only starting to get our heads around what's going on, but I severely doubt that this began as a Ponzi scheme. He he got some money. He'd been in the investment field all his life, and it just started getting bigger and bigger. And I wonder at what point he went crooked.
Well, I don't know that we'll know. I was talking to my brother. I have a brother who's a law professor at Syracuse, and he teaches tax and bankruptcy law. And one of the things that he did when he was in private practice was try to understand these Ponzi schemes that hook people in. Nothing of this nature, nothing this large, but he says they're usually very complicated because there's not good record keeping. There's so much fraud that's involved, and so many people. It isn't just one guy that perpetrates a fraud of this caliber. There are probably 50 or 100, and maybe even much larger than that, numbers of people involved in this fraud that knew something was going on and didn't sound any alarm bells. It turns out it's his own sons that were the ones that ultimately brought him down. Which this to me has all the makings of a great movie.
Yes, his firm began in 1960.
Yeah, so that's 48 years ago. Yeah, I mean that's incredible. That for nearly 5 decades, he's perpetrated a $50 billion scheme to defraud investors, and that no one questioned it. And he said, this is the thing about the Ponzi scheme. The reason why it went on so long is he was always getting enough new investors that the people who said, "Okay, I'm done. I don't want to invest anymore with you. I want to cash out." They'd get their money. So that there were enough people at the top of the pyramid that got their money and got out. It's all the people that are at the bottom that are left holding the bag, and that's the trademark or the hallmark of a pyramid scheme. Also, that there was a lot of secrecy. You couldn't speak to Bernie Madoff. You couldn't call and say, "Hey, I want to ask you about what are you investing in this long term? Are you investing in bonds, or is it?" He wouldn't tell you anything. It was all very secretive. And you'd think that people like the Royal Bank of Scotland wouldn't say, "Well, if there's no transparency, you're not getting $600 million of our dollars."
Yeah. I mean, people have trusted this guy for decades. And if you wanted to take your money out, you could get your check in a few days. And he was called T-bill Bernie. I mean, he was regarded as reliable as T-bills. And I mean, this went on for decades. But he was known for being closed with the information. As you said, he sent out accounting statements by mail. Most hedge funds allow you to just get emails, and you should be able to go online and check your account, which you could not do with him. And just a very weird thing that nobody even thought of, but now the ramifications just keep spiraling bigger and bigger. Certainly here in Los Angeles, as people try to take stock here.
Well, what's interesting in the way this story is being told, it does sound like almost every name associated with this has a Jewish-sounding last name. For instance, New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg, which I don't know if he's Jewish or not. I assume that sounds like a Jewish name. One of the wealthiest members of the Senate entrusted his family's charitable foundation to Madoff. Lautenberg's attorney said they weren't sure yet the extent of the foundation's losses, but the bulk of the investment had been handled by Madoff. Lautenberg's foundation handed out more than $765,000 to at least 100 recipients in 2006, according to the most recent listing on GuideStar, which tracks charitable organization filings. First of all, let's talk about, because it does seem to be a Jewish connection to all this, and for the sake of disclosure here, we should mention that you're an Orthodox Jew, so this isn't some kind of you're not conspiring to say that it's the Jewish crooks in banking.
Right, correct. I mean, I'm heavily involved in Jewish life, and this is all the talk because Jewish life has always depended very heavily on philanthropists. I mean, the people who actually go to synagogue every day to say their prayers, they do not tend to be the people who pay for the synagogue. The people who pay for Jewish life tend to be highly affluent, rich people who don't make so much use of the facilities. And that's the way Jewish life has run.